Hello everyone, this is Mr. Glassman again with the other assignment that you can work on in week 3 of the Venture Incubator program. For those of you who feel confident about your income statement and understand all the ways that you both make money and spend money with your business, service, or nonprofit, it's time to move on to testing your key assumptions. Now last spring, you identified your key assumptions, which you may remember are those important questions that you needed to answer before launching your venture. Now it's time for you to test those key assumptions. Testing is a large part of finding out what works before jumping fully into an idea. Whether planning a printing campaign, a new business idea, the launch of a new product or service, building a website, all key assumptions should be tested before fully launching. So, for this assignment, what you're going to do is identify 3 people who can provide you with a unique perspective on your project. You will ask them questions that will either confirm or invalidate your key assumptions from last spring. The 3 people should fall into the following categories. The first is a customer or group of customers. Now you should, by this point, have a really solid understanding of whom you plan to offer your product or service to. Now, it's time to try to sell it to them. Contact a potential customer or a group of potential customers and pitch your product to them. If you have a prototype or sample to show off, all the better. Here are some of the types of questions that you may want to ask your customers. And again, these questions will depend on your key assumptions. One question could be whether they would purchase your product or service at the price that you have set. Another could be what they would change about your product or service. Think about your questions, work through them with your mentor, because each set of questions is going to be different depending on your particular product. But for most of you, figuring out whether or not a customer would purchase your product or service and what things they would change, what they liked or disliked about your product or service, is going to be a great place to start. The second person that you want to identify is what we call a subject matter expert. This is an expert who understands the industry that you're in, whether it's video games, manufacturing, design, electronics, nonprofit, and fundraising. This is an expert that can help you with the development of your idea, the manufacturing of your product, or the planning of your service. People who have a great deal of experience in the particular area that you're interested in. Work with your mentor to identify this expert. For example, if you're building a website or an app, you'd want someone who's a developer or a designer. If you're building a product, identify someone who has built something similar in the past or who builds things like your product as their career. If you're building an event or a nonprofit, identify someone who has planned events or raised money for nonprofit organizations. Here are some of the types of questions that you'll want to ask your subject matter experts. Is the product or service that you're planning to build feasible to build? In other words, is it possible to build it in a way that is affordable and in a way that meets the requirements that you came up with? Another question would be, what resources do you need to develop your product or service? How are you going to go about building it or offering it? You could also ask, how much would it cost to develop your product or service? These are questions that a subject matter expert could help you with. And then finally, you're going to want to identify what we call a seller. A person who would understand how best to promote and sell your idea. So with the help of your mentor, identify someone who has sold something similar to what you're developing. Maybe they built an entire business like what you're building. Maybe they worked for a company that sold goods like what you're producing. Talk with this person about the best way to promote and sell your product or service. Here are some ideas of things you could ask. What is the best way to promote and sell your product or service? Do you call customers on the phone? Do you try to get them to visit a website? Do you send them flyers or post posters? What's the best strategy to market your product or service? Ask about the price. You got perspective from your customers about whether the price is reasonable. But what about a person selling it? Do they think that the price is too much, too little? Get feedback on something like that. Also ask, what can you do to differentiate your product or service from your competitors? This relates to the unique selling proposition that you came up with last year. Get some feedback on that. Now, it may be difficult to identify these people, get in touch with them, talk with them, but this is what we call primary research, and it's a really important skill to build. The ability to reach out, pitch your idea, get feedback. It's going to be so valuable for you in the building of your business. So, that's the exercise for this week. We wish you the best of luck. As always, if you have questions, go to your mentor, or as always, you can email me at eglassman@sch.org. Thank you for your time and your attention.